What is up, everybody? Brian Mendler back in your life on this Monday in April, and I am super excited today to be joined by my friend. I will call you my mentor and my actually favorite title for you. And by the way, this is going to be your next book title. I know you have a book that just came out, but I have your next book title, America's Principal. Principal Baruti Kafele. What's up, buddy? How are you, man? Good to see you.
I'm good. I'm on fire.
Yeah, good to see you, man. So how you been? How are things?
Everything is good. I was sick. Coronavirus knocked me out for about 14 days and self-quarantined and sick as a dog, but I'm 100% now. Been doing 2, 3, 4 miles a day, and
Nice.
so we good.
So how did that so just so you know, you're the first person that I actually know that's had the virus. What happened? Take me through the whole process of it.
Yeah. I guess about 3 weeks ago now, I um I had some pain in my legs, which was not normal pain. I'm used to the pain from running and walking, but this was something that was excruciating. Couldn't sleep through it. Had to take Tylenol. It was bad, but I did not associate that with the virus. I'm thinking maybe arthritis is kicking in. I didn't know what it was. So then it happened again the next night, and I'm just tossing and turning. It was just so much pain. So then about I guess a day or so later, I was eating dinner and I noticed that I couldn't taste my food.
Hmm.
So then I held it up to my nose and I said, I don't smell my food. So then I went around the house just picking up anything with a fragrance or an odor. And I said, man, I don't smell anything. So then this cough came on, um, runny nose. So I decided to go get tested. And, I'm diabetic. I got heart disease. I got high blood pressure.
Yeah.
And the cough, and they refused to test me. They said, we the tests are limited, and we can't test you. So I met the criteria for sure, but they wanted somebody that looked like they were about to die, I guess. So they said, but you do have it. They said we're diagnosing you as having COVID-19 and self quarantine for 14 days. So once I got home and settled in, then it kicked in and I got like really sick. It was violent. The worst part of it for me, and everybody's different, but the worst part of it for me were these chills. Um, I've had chills all my life through flu and viruses, but this was something very different.
Hmm.
This was overwhelming. It shook you up. You yelling and all this kind of stuff, and Tylenol would give me some relief. So I took a lot of Tylenol during those 14 days, and eventually it went on and left.
Yeah.
Then it left a lingering cough because I was coughing. I mean, during those chills, the coughs would come as well, and it was just really bad. I probably needed to go to the emergency room, but I was trying to tough it out, and because I didn't want to be there with all them other sick people.
Right.
So here
Yeah,
I am.
man. Here you are. Well, good thing, and it's good to see you, and I'm glad to have you, and I'm glad things are better, and you're somewhat getting back on the mend. Is it weird for you, like it is for me, to not be on the road right now? I mean, I know you are probably one guy that travels more than I do, at least as much, and for me, it's been strange not to be out there. What about you?
Yeah, same thing. I was, lately, not lately, but typically I brag whenever I'm home. Like I'm home, I'm just going to stare at the walls. I put that on social media all the time. But now I've been staring at these walls since March 11th. That's my last engagement, which was local. It was in Newark, in Jersey, and I haven't been out since. So yeah, I'm really itching to get out. And as you know, I've been posting that I don't anticipate being out until next year. But I don't mind being wrong on that. I just don't, So people like yourself and I, we make our money by being out. So there is nothing coming in except for these virtual Zoom presentations that I've been doing. We're kind of stepping those up now, so it helps, and
Yeah.
that's a
Same here. I did one yesterday with a group from North Dakota, and it was really good actually. I'm actually as I go kind of devising what I do. You know what I mean? It's not the most. I don't do it all the time. So when you don't do something all the time, you got to get used to it. But I did a half hour with their students. So they're doing a bunch with their kids. They have their kids online learning, and they kind of put out to their, it was really grades 5 and up. And it was that I was going to be on kind of the presentation I do is called Attitude and Effort. And it's about focusing on what you can control as a kid, because the bottom line is, look, and again, I don't have a judgment about this, but we've pulled a lot away from kids, right? We've taken away their sports, taken away their playgrounds, taken away their friends, we've taken away their graduations, we've taken away their proms. I mean, we have taken so much away from the youngest generation, the generation I call most vulnerable. A lot of people call the elderly the most vulnerable. I don't call elderly vulnerable. I call elderly durable and badasses, but I don't call them vulnerable. My elderly folk would get annoyed at me if I called them vulnerable. They'd be like, I ain't vulnerable, you know. But and then I did an hour with their staff after that. So it was really great. I love it. I actually love the virtual stuff. I'm lucky that I do this podcast from my house. So I got this whole setup in here where, you know, I can get on and just kind of switch gears, but it's not the same. You know, I miss meeting all the people. That's the thing that I miss the most, is just being out there and shaking hands with people and hugging people and saying hello to people and getting inspired by them as much as they inspire me.
Same here. You feed off of that energy, and I miss that. I
I
tell
know.
a lot of, you got the tech people out here. This is the new normal. You might as well get used to doing your presentations via distance learning. I said, no, I'm not going to get used to this. This is not what I want. Like, I do the Sunday morning Facebook and Twitter lives, and I love those. I enjoy them. But see, the difference between that and doing the professional presentation is those Facebook and Twitter lives are people who are into you. You don't have people on there that don't want to hear you because they can just log off. Where when you're doing the professional learning, you got people in there that love you, but then you got some other folks that wish you hurry up and finish. So you got both worlds in there.
That's for sure. So we first met, I think it was probably now about 7 or 8 years ago. I don't remember exactly which city, but it was definitely at the Innovative Schools Summit, which I believe you just got done doing. How was that, by the way?
And it was awesome. Just reading the comments from the chat while I was speaking gave me a lot of energy because I really didn't know what it was going to be. The numbers were higher than they anticipated because they were talking 250 and it was 375. And so once I started seeing the comments, the amens and the preach and so forth, then I kind of stepped it up and probably woke up everybody in the house because I just got
By the
hyped.
way.
So that was a good experience.
So what do you talk about? What's for people that don't know you or are not familiar? I just so you know, I have a different audience, I think, than you do. Like my buddy Jimmy Casas, you guys kind of run in the administrator world, I think, a little more than I do. I run more in the teacher world. So I was never an administrator, right? I was always a teacher. And I do a lot more on Instagram, which is where a lot of teachers are. Most of the administrators are on Twitter. So for people that are unfamiliar with you, what is that? Because I've seen it. I've seen it in person where you wake people up, and it's fantastic. But what is it?
Yeah, I was in that teacher world for a long time as a presenter. I'm still in it, but I'm not in it the way I was because as I got older, just I can't even put my finger on it, but something just said to me that I want to talk to leaders, and I guess because I was a principal for 14 years, that I just want to talk to leaders a little bit more, a lot more than I want to talk to teachers. Nothing against the teachers, just that leadership is what I did for the longest period of time in my professional career. So I rebranded. I was always calling myself Principal Kafele from as a holdover from the days of principalship, but I rebranded and started to write solely for the principals and assistant principals, and develop multiple presentations for them. And just in terms of how I marketed myself, I became this principal guy, this school leadership guy. So that's what I do. Pretty much all facets, with the exception of technology of school leadership. That's what I do. But now, like if use my hands, leadership being out here, now I've kind of even narrowed more, and I'm on the assistant principal, and I've made the assistant principal a personal mission because I look at that position and I say, man, the assistant principalship is the most misunderstood and underutilized position in education. Period. I wrote a blog post on it about not even a year ago. And of the 50 some odd blog posts I've written, that's the one that went viral.
Hmm.
And I said, wow, this resonated with a lot of people. And I know it couldn't have been solely assistant principals that read it. It was probably a lot of principals, a lot of superintendents, because that they're all in that same administrative network. So when I saw that, I said, okay, I need to write the book. And that became, I literally wrote it in what, 2 3 weeks. The assistant principal 50, wrote it on airplanes, hotel rooms, gate areas, that type of thing. And the book has been in the top 100 on Amazon for the past 2 weeks, and it doesn't come out for another month.
So
So
what? Oh, sorry.
yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just curious, like, what makes that position so misunderstood? When you say it's so misunderstood, what do you exactly mean by that?
Phenomenal question. Because you go around, you visit different schools, and you find that assistant principals are used in so many different ways, but primarily as school disciplinarians.
Yeah.
So they'll spend, if it's a school that's got discipline issues, which for me translates into climate and culture issues, and discipline just being the manifestation of a macro climate and culture. So they've got these discipline issues, and now this person has been designated as the one to respond to them. So now there's a culture in the school where the teacher will write disciplinary referrals and send them to the assistant principal all day long.
Yeah.
So now this person from 8 to 3 is responding to disciplinary referrals. But here's the problem. This person evaluates, let's say that this is a small school, about 700, and it's got one principal, one assistant principal. That means this person evaluates half of that staff. This person, better word, this person supervises half of that staff. If I'm spending my day with disciplinary referrals, there's nothing about my day that I'm an instructional leader. There's nothing about my day that positions me to help teacher to become stronger in areas of deficiency, right? Or areas that just need to be strengthened. So because this person is a full-time disciplinarian, and then during the lunch periods, this person probably will close his office or her office and then spend 2 3 4 lunch periods in the cafeteria supervising kids, and then go back to the discipline after lunch. So in what part of that equation can that teacher look at that assistant principal in the face and think within him or herself that I'm a better teacher because of the collegial relationship that I have with the assistant principal or with my evaluator of record? See, and it's not going to happen. So I wrote the book to say, assistant principal, let's re-examine what you do. But I couldn't write the book solely for the assistant principal, because he or she may not be able to change that if that's the directive to operate in that fashion. So I said, let's make sure that this book is read by principals, assistant superintendents, and superintendents. And then I'm going on this one man mission, this one man crusade to get that book into graduate schools, to get that book into districts, wherever it needs to be, so that we
Yeah.
can re-examine the role of the assistant principal, and that person is functioning as an instructional leader. And that's not to imply that all principals are functioning as instructional leaders, right? But
Right.
two of them. So
But
that's why I
yeah,
focus
and
my
it's
time. Yeah.
and it's way more. I agree, and it's also purely from a behavior standpoint. It doesn't, I believe, it doesn't often give the assistant principal a chance to work with the teacher on how the teacher can get better at behavior, right? A lot of times what happens with, I think, assistant principals and behavior specialists in schools is they become rescuers. And when you become a rescuer, if I tie your shoes all the time for you, then you never have to learn how to tie them yourself. And I see that happening in multiple schools. And so it's this perpetual cycle of the same kids always getting trouble, always getting in trouble, always getting removed, always the ones that are, because there's never this point where, and so my question then follow up is then what exactly do you do, right? So if I'm a principal, what do I do with my assistant principal to make sure that they do get that time with the teachers?
Yeah, so now it boils down to those tough conversations in terms of, why do we have these issues? What is it that what is it about first the student, that the student is exhibiting undesirable behavior? What is it about the teacher that the teacher is not able to modify that behavior? So that's all micro, but now let's expand it, and let's look at the macro. What is it about the climate of this school? What is it that we feel when we walk in here? What is the mood of this school, and to what extent do we have influence over it as not just administrators, but as a team, as a school community? Let's look at the culture of the school, the way we're living here, our way of life. Is this culture conducive to young people engaging in the behaviors that we would expect them to engage in? So again, it's not so much like you go into a classroom and there's a chart on the wall that says rules and consequences. I always say to the teacher, pull that down. That's not your issue. The word rules in and of itself has a negative connotation to it. I said, let's talk about our expectations. Let's talk about our values. Let's talk about our norms of coexisting in this classroom, right? Or in this school. So let's look at the language we're using as we're looking at the bigger picture, climate, culture, mood, lifestyle of this school, so that ultimately it trickles down to the behavioral and discipline issues that we're having as a school.
Yeah, I do the same. And I actually think so. When I talk to teachers about behavior and we talk about expectations slash rules, what I explain to them is that an expectation should always specifically tell a kid what to do. A value answers why they're doing it. So, for example, a value in my classroom would be respectful. An expectation would be keep your hands and feet to yourselves. Mr. Mendler, what? Why do you care? We're just playing. We're just touching each other. And then my answer is, I don't really care. It seems like I care a lot about you touching each other, but I really don't. What I care is that you learn how to respect each other's personal space, and you all haven't learned that yet. So stop touching each other. See how when the way I answer it, right? My expectation ties to a value, and that's the way I know if I have a bad expectation. If a kid says, why do I have to follow X, Y, or Z expectation? And my answer is because I said so, or because that's the way it's always been, or because that's how we do things here. I'm not tying it to a value. And if I'm not tying it to a value, then a person is much less likely to buy in. The other example I use is responsibility, right? Based on the value of responsibility, you'll bring a notebook and a pencil to class every day. Where's your notebook? But where's your notebook? But where is your notebook? Because either you have it or you don't. See how the expectation is measurable? You can't debate it, right? And that's the thing about challenging kids is if you leave them an avenue to argue, they will take that avenue all day long. And that's why there's so many power struggles in school, because teachers leave that avenue, the kid takes it, and then the teachers just, yes, you will, no, I won't, yes, you will. And then they're battling all day long. And so for me, it's about the expectation tells you what, the value answers why, and we connect those two things. And if we can't connect those dots, that's when we have to relook at the rule. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense. That's it.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
where you grew up in Jersey as well?
Yeah, I'm a Jersey guy, through and through. I grew up here, born here, East Orange, New Jersey. Lived there for a good portion of my life, and I've been in Jersey City for about 30 years now.
But what about that growing up? Take me through it. Were you a good student in school? Did you enjoy school? What kind of background did you come from?
Elementary was great. Um, had great years, great memories. Still friends with with several of them folks. But late middle school took a turn. Just stuff happening, life happening, and me not adapting to it, and wound up not going to school, quitting school
What
in
happened?
grade 9. Just stuff that I don't want to put on the recording. Um,
Understood.
just stuff happening. Like we talk about young people dealing with all sorts of challenges, obstacles, things, and stuff. Last stuff in my life, and I said, man, school has taken on less significance for me. It's not important. So fell in love with the streets, and that was life for a little bit. But my mom saw so much promise in me that she stayed on me, got me back in school, lived with my father, went to by then my third high school. That didn't work out. So then came back home with her, and then we moved to another part of Jersey. So I went to 4 different high schools through my mom trying to save her son, and graduated from 4 schools in 5 years with a 1.5 GPA, and a counselor that told me that I wouldn't amount to anything, as so many have heard in their own lives. So I went on and took him up on it, and did nothing for the next 5 years. I enrolled in junior college but never set foot in classes. Just myself and my guys. We just kind of hung out and had a good time in the student center. So in '84, and watching other friends graduating from the universities, and me at 23 years old with the intellectual capacity of a 13-year-old, I went to my mother and said, I need to do something, and I think I'm ready to go to college. And I said, I just need you to pay for it, and I'll take care of the rest. So she paid for it. I went, and I graduated with a 3.9 in 2 years, summa cum laude. And a lot of folks ask me, well, how'd you do it? And it's interesting. I had when I got to that school, I literally stumbled. Matter of fact, let me give you a different sequence. I have a book sitting right here. The the autobiography of Malcolm X. When I went to Kane University in New Jersey, as a matter of fact, let me back up again. The reason I have this book so close to me, it's we're on a stay-at-home social distancing global pandemic. I'm in the house 23 hours a day. 1 hour I'm out doing my walk and my run. Outside of that, I'm home. Outside of doing work-related stuff, which is not going to consume my entire day, what are you going to do with your time? Let me reread the first book I ever read in my life at the age of 23. Let me read it again. Let me read the book that made me the man I am today, the educator I am today. Because prior to reading that book, I was that guy I just explained to you, described to you. I was him, even at the age of 23. So I read that book, and for the first time in my life, I'm introduced to a black man versus a black male, right? I knew black males. I knew them all over the place, but I didn't know the epitome of a man, right? So I read this book about Malcolm, and I tell people all the time, if you're going to read that book, make sure you read the whole book, because if you stop at any point before the end, then you don't know Malcolm, right? So you got to read it to the end of the book to see what he evolved into. So reading that book, I said, man, why didn't I know this? And I went on and read about 20 additional books on his life and speeches and all that kind of thing, which I'm literally looking at on a shelf. I got a special shelf just for Malcolm up there. And read all these books, and it made me a straight A student, because not only did I read him, but I read King, and then I read history, and I'm reading everything that relates to African American history, everything I can get my hands on. Read about 500 books in a very short period of time while maintaining a 4.0 before I took some math related courses that brought me these A minuses and hence the 3.9. But I'm saying that to say this: I didn't know my history. Most children that look like me don't know their history. And for me, I said, wow, to kind of tie in your question to what I did with it, because I did something with it. I said, I want to be a teacher now. As a result, because I didn't go to school for education. I went to school for business. I said, I want to be a teacher. I want to teach what I've been reading. I became a teacher. I got a whole curriculum I got to teach, but I can make that curriculum culturally relevant. So I did. So I got all these awards as a teacher. They made me the district teacher of the year, the county teacher of the year, finalist for New Jersey State Teacher of the Year, because of this, rooted in this. So then I become a principal. And I said, and I was the youngest principal in the district. And I said to the superintendent, allow me to do what I did as a teacher, because he knew what I was doing as a teacher, because I invited him to my classroom all the time. So I want you to come to my classroom, because I want to be a principal. So I said, look, I want to be a principal, so I want you to see what I do. So, and when you see what I do, that'll sell me better than I can articulate what I do. So he'd come to my classroom all the time. So I like that. I said, okay, allow me to do what I did as a teacher, as a principal. Let me make learning culturally relevant, because the district was 100% African American. I said, if you do so, I promise you we'll have the highest test scores in the district. He said, okay. I said, he said, but I'm gonna hold you accountable. I said, fine, no problem. I said, give me 3 years. Give me till the incoming sixth graders are eighth graders, because I don't want to, I can't make that promise with students I inherit. They got to be mine. When those students became eighth graders, this is going back quite a few years. It's 2002. When those students, when they were eighth graders, when they became eighth graders, not only were we the highest in the district, but we were the highest in the entire state of New Jersey of students of similar demographics, right? Inner city, students of color, poor. And folks asked me, like, what y'all do differently? And I said, very simple. We put the children on the pages of the books they were reading. We put the children in the lessons that they were receiving. We said, let's make sure, like if you and I turn on the television, we're not going to put on something random. We're going to search for what we like. Like I don't watch a lot of TV right now because I can't watch the NBA, right? National Basketball Association, and that's primarily what I watch. Like I'm certainly watching the news because of the virus, but outside of that, I don't watch television. So, but if I do, I'm looking for that which I identify with, that where I see myself, that I relate to, that which meets my needs relative to my interests. So, in the classroom, in terms of what we were doing back in those days, I said, man, why would a kid be interested in something that he or she doesn't see him or herself? Let me put them in the lesson. Let me put them on the walls. Let me put them in everything we do. And I said to the soup, and I promise you they will perform, even though we're a low performing school.
What
So
does that exactly mean when you say put them in? What do you, so if I'm a teacher or I'm an administrator, what's like one, two, three things I could do specifically that puts them in?
yeah. So let's say, for example, in fact, I hope you didn't hear me say this at the Innovative School Summit. Let me use this as an example.
I don't remember anyway. So
And even if you did, your audience didn't hear it.
right,
Uh,
right. Right.
yeah,
Well, I don't remember what I did yesterday. So I got to tell you, I get frustrated when people tell me that they saw me one year and they can't come back, right? Like you ever have that where you go to a place 2 years in a row and they're nervous about bringing you back the second year. And I always say to people, if you ate at a really great restaurant one year, one time, and it only came around once a year, would you not go back to it the second year? Even if it was the same exact food, which by
yeah,
the way, this food's different. I'm not bringing the same food every year. But even if it was the same, you would still go
yeah,
back, right? Like it's ridiculous to me that they make that assumption. Well, I saw him last year, but I can't see him again. Like, what are you talking about? It's crazy, you know?
yeah. See, with me, I can't remember where I spoke the day before, ever.
Right.
So the people will say, "Where are you coming from?" And I'm always embarrassed when they ask me because I'm like, I don't remember. Weren't you there yesterday speaking? You don't know where you were? I have no idea. You don't know what state? No. Let me think about it for a second, or I'll pull out my phone and look at my schedule. Oh yeah, I was in Arkansas. I mean, it becomes I
Yeah.
remember face, I just don't remember where I was. Yeah, I can
There's
see the
gonna
state
be
stuff,
There's going
but
to be two dates that you never forget. March 11th, you'll never forget. And wherever the first one is when this is over, you'll never
yeah,
forget. And I keep saying the same thing. I was in Vincent, Alabama on March 13th. I got through that whole week. So I just got lucky. I felt like I was playing Frogger and I was going to places where they weren't getting shut down yet. And I got through the week. Vincent, Alabama was March 13th. I wouldn't remember them for any other reason, but I will never forget them because that was my last one, and then we'll see where it picks up. And I'll never forget the first one after it's over too.
that's right.
So
That's right.
anyway,
So
back to that question.
well,
So what do I do if I'm a
here,
principal or teacher to
here,
show them
here-
themselves, basically?
here's a date that I don't forget. December 1st, 2018. I was speaking in Boston, and I got there a day early. It was my wife's birthday, so my wife traveled with me, which is rare. And we said let's take in some colonial Boston, right? So we went downtown courthouse. I wanted to go to King Street, so I said let's go down to King Street. So we're on King Street, and I'm looking for something very specific on King Street. So we're walking around. I'm looking. She's looking. I said to her, "Do you see it?" No, I don't see it either. So then we go inside, and I asked one of the workers there, where's, here's what I was looking for. I said, "Where's the monument for Crispus Attucks?" Crispus Attucks, for those that may watch this and don't know who he is, Crispus Attucks was the first person to die for America's independence from Britain. back on March 5th, 1770, whom happened to be black, right? So the first person, not the first black person, but the first person to die for America's independence was a black man.
Hmm.
March 5, 1770. So I'm on the spot where he died. I'm on King Street. So I want to see a monument for him because as an African American, colonial Boston is not something that's going to turn me on, right? I'm not going to get anything out of that in terms of, because it represents oppression, right? In terms of that period, relative to black people. So, but so if we could take colonial Boston, I'll outstretch my arms. It's all of this here, but Crispus Attucks, I'll narrow, and there's this thing that I can relate to and identify with. Oh, that black guy, and that's not to say that folks outside of African Americans are not relevant. I'm talking about historical now.
Yeah, I got you.
So this black guy, he died for America's independence. He's the first one to take a bullet. Where's the monument? It's not there. So I go inside. Where's the monument? I don't know. Where's your supervisor? Can I see him or her? They get him. Where's the monument for Crispus Attucks? Because I know he died right outside this door. I really don't know. I think he died, and they pointed in the opposite direction, way down the street. But that's not King Street. He died on King Street. So then, so here's my point. I had no interest in the rest of what was down there because I can't see me in it. It's not relevant culturally. I mean, if I want to have a further understanding of the oppression that represents, that's different. But in terms of a feel good, it's only going to be Crispus Attucks. So now let's take that and transfer that back to the classroom relative to your question. Everybody's going to be exposed to colonial history, right? When they take American history. But will the teacher take into consideration everybody in that classroom, including the white children, and say, let me not confine this to those characters that we typically learn about when we learn colonial history, Boston history. What's going on? That's my son there. Colonial history, all that kind of stuff. Let's broaden it and make sure that on the one hand, the black students are learning about these folks relative to people that look like them, part of their ancestry, part of their heritage. But the white children, the Asian children, the Latino children, the whomever children are also learning that black folks are not confined to sports and entertainment, right? That they've got a history that's scientific. They got a history that's mathematical. There's a history that's educational. There's a history in law, in engineering, in architecture, and I can go astronomy and astrology. I can go on and on with that. But if as teacher, I'm not culturally relevant and culturally responsive and culturally sensitive relative to who's in that classroom, then I'm going to give them Eurocentric instruction, Eurocentric curriculum every time. That black child sitting there lost, like, what does this have to do with me? Where's me in this? And that's not just in a history environment. That's in a math environment. That's in a science environment. That's in a language arts, writing, reading environment. It's in whatever environment. Like you take, for example, like you got that fancy studio there. I'd never show you what I got here. I got a desk lamp here, another one here, and then some track lighting up there, right? And it's so it's old school. But here's the thing: as I look at these lights, and I talk about this a lot, Thomas Edison is typically credited with this light bulb invention. But the truth of the matter is, he had this African American young man by the name of Lewis Latimer that worked with him, this brilliant inventor, engineer, scientist, Lewis Latimer. And when that light bulb was invented, it was a bulb, but it didn't sustain its glow for long at all. It got very hot, it was very dangerous, and it was very expensive to produce. Lewis Latimer, he said, you know something, Mr. Edison, I can fix that because there's a piece that's missing called carbon thread filament. He said, let me put the carbon thread filament in the bulb. and it will glow for long periods of time. It'll be safe. It won't get overly hot, and it'll be less expensive to produce. So this is in like 1881. He puts this carbon thread filament in the bulb. Now you got the bulbs that you and I are using right now. And then he said, well, let me go on and write about this. So Lewis Latimer wrote the first textbook ever written in America on electrical lighting. But now that there's lights, now you can light up cities. So New York City, Philadelphia, Montreal, London, as they began to install lighting, he supervised it all, right? And that's the story that's not told. So now here you got this young African American, and depending on what home life may be, young African American identifying with a rapper, with a singer, with a dancer, with an athlete, not knowing. No, you can identify with some scientists too. You can identify with some mathematicians too. You can identify with some builders, with some engineers, with some architects, and I can go on and on. There's so much other you can identify with outside of pop culture, but if he or she is not exposed. But the biggest problem to that, if I'm teacher, and I can be black teacher and not know what I just said, right? So now I can't teach what I don't know, and I can't teach whom I don't know, right? So if I don't have the information, I can't talk about a Lewis Latimer. So now I've got this curriculum that may mention Thomas Edison and all that kind of thing, inventors during that period, but it doesn't mention the fact that there were black inventors. Like there's a book I have over on the shelf there called Black Inventors of America. It's got all the inventions and all the patent numbers, because let me go back to Lewis Latimer for a second. Latimer was friendly with Alexander Graham Bell. So Alexander Graham Bell invents this phone, and he didn't invent it as a phone. It was a hearing device because his wife was deaf. So he invents this device which evolves into a phone. But he couldn't do anything with the invention, because in order to patent it, you have to have a blueprint. Well, he wasn't a mechanical drawer. So Lewis Latimer was. So Lewis Latimer draws up the blueprint for this template of a phone, and now Alexander Graham Bell gets the patent. So that phone is not solely Alexander Graham Bell, because there is no phone without Lewis Latimer. See, so I'm saying, so while I'm in school beyond Malcolm now, and I'm doing all this reading and reading all this history, I'm like, man, I stand on all these shoulders. I'm part of an ancestry that's done all of this with the inventions and the science and so forth. I said, what am I doing, wasting my time doing nothing? And so school became easy for me. It was easy to get straight A's, right? Because I now knew who that was in my mirror.
Yeah, makes
So
sense.
you see, as a teacher, I said that's the approach I'm going to bring. And then as a principal, I did the same thing. Now as a speaker, I had to evolve even more so, because all audiences in the real world are not ready for what I just shared with you. They're not. Because if you got an audience, you got this in the room.
Yep.
You got people in all different places. So some people, they're sitting in the room, and I don't care what their race, ethnicity is, they're hungry and they want this. You got some other people in the room, what I just said, they mad at me. Make no mistake about it, because they let me know.
Yep.
So either in person or on social media, right? So they're upset with me because I didn't go slowly with giving them the information. I just kind of gave it to them.
Yeah.
So over the years, over the decades, I learned how to deal with those audiences well.
Yeah, but and I think that that's part of what we do. It's certainly part of what I do, right? I don't show up at your school or in your place or in your living room to tell you how great you are all the time. Like my goal is to shake things up. One of my favorite lines is that discomfort is the appetizer for growth. Discomfort comes before growth. And it
Yeah.
happens in my workshop. There's times where I do things in my workshop where people are like, whoa. And you could feel the tension in the room. And I look right at them and I say, y'all feeling uncomfortable yet? And they kind of nod. And I say, good, that's the goal. And I tell them what happens in life when we get uncomfortable is we want to run from the discomfort. We want to hide from it. We want to get far away from it. And I look at them and I say, but not today and not while you're with me. Today, while you're with me for one day of your life, I'm going to ask you to embrace the discomfort, hug it, let yourself feel it, marinate in it. And like a good workout, at the end, you're going to love your personal trainer. By the way, you're probably going to hate your trainer while you're going through the workout, because while you're going through workouts, you usually don't like the trainer. But at the end, you're like, when could I bring that trainer back? Because they push you to places that you've never been. And I believe in general, that's what great teachers do. Great teachers push people to places that they've never been, right? They make them say, holy cow, I could do that. And I never in my life believed it was possible, right? And when you're able to do that to people, learning, in my opinion, goes just to a whole other level, because the trust factor that comes in is enormous. Or all of a sudden they trust you, right? They look at you and they say, that guy understands what he's talking. Just shut up and listen to him for a second, because he already explained that you're going to be uncomfortable. He already explained that you're going to feel that way, and it's okay to feel that way, and embrace it now. And once we do that, that's one of the things I love about you and about watching you speak. And it's one of the things I've taken from you. And I tend to take things from people and then push them to a whole other level, and I do this thing in my workshop where I talk about being in special ed, as a kid. And I talk about, how they used to say those special ed kids cause all the problems in our school. And I used to hear that phrase all the time. And I always say to the audience, would you ever say those black kids, them? I mean, they're causing all the problems. So let's contain them, right? I mean, let's give them their own room away from everybody else. Let's just build that other group, the Chinese. Let's build them their own school. Like, you would never do that with any other group of people, but they do it with special ed kids all the time. And the goal is not to change the behavior. The goal is to get you to reflect on the behavior. The goal is to get you to think about that the words, the terminology that we use, it matters, and it matters a lot,
That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. With that word discomfort, that's one I use as well. There was a time when folks were calling me a motivational speaker when I was years ago, and I embraced it. So I was using it, motivational speaker. And then somewhere along the way, I guess it hit me, and I said, motivation is good in terms of adult learning, but it lasts until the audience gets into the parking lot. And then once they get into the parking lot, they're probably not thinking about my motivating message, right? My inspiring message, my big closing, right? It's they're probably not thinking about that anymore. So I said, I need to change that language. I said, I don't want to be a motivational speaker. And I created this title. I said, I want to be a discomfort speaker, right? I said, call me a discomfort speaker. I want to go into a room and I want you to say ouch while you're listening to me. I don't need a standing ovation anymore. I've got enough of those behind me now. So if you don't want to stand and clap, I don't need that anymore. I want you to sit there squirming in your seat, feeling uncomfortable, feeling a sense of tension and uneasiness, because I want you to feel uncomfortable within your comfort. So I tell people all the time, I'm a discomfort speaker, because discomfort is going to stay with you beyond the parking lot. If the presenter made you uncomfortable, that's not going to leave you. You're going to take that attitude with you home. You might even talk about it over dinner, and there's more of a probability that you'll look at it, especially once the tension goes away, and say, maybe I need to tweak something. Maybe I need to make some changes in what I'm doing. But motivation may not do that. Motivation may affirm them. I want to make you uncomfortable.
And it's the same teacher to kid, right? Like, sometimes you're going to have kids that are uncomfortable, that are pushing through problems, that don't understand concepts. And when they're feeling that, I think it's really important that teachers explain it to the kid. Explain to the kid what is going. A lot of times kids don't really understand what's going on inside themselves, right? And so if you understand that as a teacher, then you can say to the kid, hey, right now this is normal. Just so you know what you're going through, you've pushed harder today than you ever have in your life, and it's aggravating. And I get it. I understand it. But right now is the time for you. Right now is the time where you're either going to quit or you're going to bust through a brick wall that has never been busted through before. And it is your choice to make. So look at how far you've come and look at where you need to go. The windshield. Go forward. A lot of times kids get to a place and they start looking in the rearview mirrors. And I always say, if you ever drive in a car and you stare in a rearview mirror, you crash every single time. Rear view mirrors were made for glancing, not staring. You have to go forward. That's why the windshield is so big. And you push kids to realize and accept that. And once they do, I feel like their work ethic for me as a teacher went through the roof, because they were like, yeah, Mr. Mendler, he always talks about being uncomfortable. He's made this a place where that's actually a good thing. And I think you talk about sports. I think that great coaches do that all the time, right? They practice is harder than the game. I mean, you
Mm.
hear that frequently from great players. Kobe used to say that all the time. Come watch us. Today, I'm surprised they don't have more practice on like social media where the guys are going hard at each other and there's no fan, because that's the place where they're really pushing themselves, I feel like.
That's why I was such a big fan of Kobe. I love Kobe. I was a Laker fan. I thought I was a Laker fan until he retired. And when he retired, I had no more interest in the Lakers. And I love Kobe not so much for who I saw on the basketball court on television. I love Kobe for what I learned about him off court, in the gym by himself or with teammates working out. In the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning and all that kind of stuff. Until now,
Legendary.
yeah, legendary. So I took that and I transferred it to the work. I'm a workaholic as well, and that's part of my attraction to him, because I get that. If you want to be at a certain level, you got to put forth the work.
Are you able, so right now, being that way as a person, which I am as well, has this been has been, other than the fact that you were sick, which set that aside, has the rest of it been very difficult for you? It was for me. For the first week, I had a really hard time because I felt like I was this cage tiger kind of pacing around trying to figure out what to do. It was so not the norm of my life. How are you doing in that way?
I'm the same way. I'm the exact same way. I'm used to being out there doing what I do, what I worked for all these years, and now I can't. So it's very frustrating. I love a vacation, but not this long,
No.
right? So I'm trying. I've been writing for the past, I guess, 5 years now. I've been writing a book a year. I keep them short, but I do a book a year. The, this is an ideal time to write a book. The problem is, I write a book when it's usually for me around October, November. A book emerges within me. I'm in April now. I got nothing. See. For me to sit down and write a book now, I'd be forcing it. It's not so. I'm not going to have that organic flow. I wish there was something in me. There's a title in me, and I even told my publisher that I was going to do this book, but the ideas are not in me yet. It's the climate culture 50. Because I've been doing all these 50 books, the principal 50, the assistant principal 50, the aspiring principal 50, the teacher 50. Now I got the climate culture 50. That's the title, but I don't have the book flowing.
America's Principle. That's the title. I'm telling you, that's a home run. America's Principle. That's what you are. That's what I believe that you are. You watch. All right, maybe not the America's Principle, and then we got to get a subtitle. I hear you though. But what's interesting that you say that is I feel the opposite of that. So I generally struggle to write books. I don't like writing, right? I'm a presenter slash teacher first and an author second. I only have written books because people ask me for them and they want them. I don't enjoy the process. I don't like it. It's not fun for me. But what's been crazy is during this time, I've organically been the opposite. And I think it's because I have a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old here. And it's been fascinating for me to watch the difference in their teachers with online learning. My
Oh,
6-year-old's teacher has been spectacular. I'm talking about she's online teaching them live for an hour and a half every single day. My
mm,
son's teacher has done bupkis, basically nothing. I'm not trying to throw her under the bus, even though I have basically every week for the last 5 weeks because I'm frustrated. I am. But it is this book, this just, I've been writing. I don't even, the way I write is I just write and then I put it into a book. I just formulate into a book. But for me, And it's also watching them, watching their emotions, watching what happens to kids when you yank away their life, right? And that's what we did. Let's be clear, we yanked away these kids' lives. We talk about kids trusting adults. Think about it from a kid's perspective now when they go back, right? We already have kids who often didn't trust adults. Now they're coming back, and some of these kids are going to be like, yo, I was in school on Thursday or Friday, and then all of a sudden, that was it. And for a lot of teachers, and I don't mean this rudely, but it's the truth. In my house, with one of my children, it was legitimately it. Like no reaching out, no calling, no emailing, no text messaging, no, right? And seeing him versus watching her. And now my son's in second grade, at the end of second grade. The best part of his day is when my daughter's teacher is teaching. He sits through the kindergarten lessons just
Wow.
because he wants the interaction, he wants the social, he wants to see other kids that are all on there. And I can't tell you how critical it's been to have that for us with my daughter. And it's been the forefront of what I've been talking about a lot on here. And there's reasons that people say they don't do it. You know, we with privacy issues and equity issues. And I get that. But I'm curious as to your take on this with the equity issue. What is your take on that with online learning?
Oh, well, there's millions out there that don't have Wi-Fi nor computer.
Yep.
And one of the things, Marcus Jackson, he had brought to my attention, because I hadn't even thought about it, the volume of educators that don't have Wi-Fi either, because they live in rural towns. So, but going back to the student, districts have to figure that out. You know, so I read someone said this was like a play with no dress rehearsal. We just had
Yep.
to dive into the opening night, right? So now here we are, opening night, and then the discovery. Wow, we got a whole lot, like in Atlanta. They said that I forgot the number now, the percentage, but it's a large percentage of their young people that do not have access, right? So now we got to figure it out. How do we ensure, particularly if this becomes a new normal? And I always say, the tech people, they're the ones that are really driving that. This is going to be the new normal for education.
Absolutely.
But in my mind, nothing replaces an extraordinary teacher. And although online learning technology is here to stay, I will stand on firmly until the day I can't anymore, that youngster still needs that human to human
Oh,
connection,
sure.
and not through a computer,
Sure.
right? If, for a lot of the reasons that I needed it.
Sure.
But yeah,
Well,
the inequity became so. I mean, it's like we just pulled the covers off of it with COVID-19, with the volume of young people whose education has come to a screeching halt. It just
screeching
doesn't
halt.
exist, right? Because I don't have access.
Yep. And,
And I,
and so my take on it is that I think if you're a teacher and you have access, you have to get on. And who's ever on is on, right? So you start with who's ever there. And then you work from there to figure out why isn't this one on? Why isn't that one on? What do we have to do for this one? But it doesn't mean you don't educate everybody who can be there. Kind of like the same way you would do it in school, right? If 50% of your class showed up and 50% didn't for whatever reason, it wouldn't matter what the reason was. You wouldn't not educate the 50% that were there. You would say, we're going to educate this 50% right here. And then we're going to work as hard as we possibly can to figure out how do we get these other kids to come to class. And what I hear on social media from some people is the reason they're not educating I'm not saying this is my son's school. I don't know exactly why they're not, but I'm hearing from some places, the reason they're not doing it is because certain kids don't have access. And I don't think that's the right approach to take.
don't know. I don't need. I
You
don't
don't
need. Yeah, but I've been doing a lot of these live videos, leading and teaching in the age of a global pandemic, and doing a lot. I've been doing a lot of writing, but just not book writing, but article writing, blog post writing, and that's pretty much been my theme. So in terms of leaders, I'm saying the principle, that's part of your new leadership. How do I get that youngster that doesn't want to be a part of learning in terms of virtual learning? How do I get that youngster engaged? What are those things I can do? And it's tough because of social distancing. It's
Yeah.
tough because the virus is contagious, so you don't want to be around people. But what are those strategies? So therefore, I'm saying the principals, you must have a staff meeting with your staff 5 days a week, bar none. You know, during a normal school year, you'll be hard pressed to find teachers that love a staff meeting, right? And if it can be limited to one a month, I'm sure every teacher will give the principal a standing ovation. But during this time, if there's even one day that you don't have a staff meeting on via Zoom or whatever you use, then that means that day you were detached from your school. You had no contact. You don't have feedback from your teachers relative to what's going on with the students who were there, or the students who are not there. You're not aware that they're not there. So you don't you're detached. You're in a different world from your staff. So I'm saying, therefore, you've got to have that meeting on a daily basis. Doesn't have to be a long meeting, but you got your whole staff on the screen
Correct.
and you can hear from them and they can hear from you, because
Correct.
there's some things you need to share with them as well, or else they're out there in isolation if
And
you're not connected to them. Good.
that's the goal as a teacher as well. No different. It's the same exact thing, right? I mean, if you stop seeing your kids, then you become disconnected and not attached. And I got to interview Jerry Brooks this week, so his podcast is going to drop on April 20th. Yours is going to be on the 27th, and he talked about how important relationship building is through this time, and how critical and how available it is, how actually available it is in so many different ways. And how that's where you're going to separate yourself right now. And when this all comes back, which I'm 1000% with you, I think we need school bad, right? I'm almost to the point myself where I'm saying we got to open them. I'm almost to that point. I'm almost to the point where I think we have gone too long with this. My children have suffered enough, right? Again, I'm not saying I'm there yet, and I don't know, and I'm glad I don't make these calls. But when you look at it purely through the kids didn't have a say in this. They don't interview the kids, right? They don't interview any child psychologist lead story of the news saying this kid didn't get food today. This one's getting beaten and molested by somebody that they stay home with, right? I put on my Twitter today, it's easy to tell people to stay home when you have a nice home, right? When
Yeah.
you have a good home life, when things are nice and fine and dandy. But the kids I taught, that's not the world a lot of them came from. And to my thought, when I think of them staying home, I get anxious and I'm like, oh man, that kid, the only place that kid got love was at school. The
Yeah.
only place anybody ever hugged that kid was at school, and it was once a day or twice a day. And now we have taken that away. And man, right, I feel like we're living in a world right now where there's really crappy options all around you. You got no good options if you're kind of a leader. On one hand, you're like pure destruction of the economy and mass devastation of children, right? On the other hand, you got people dying, and there's no there like you there's no good answer to that. And it's part for me of what's so frustrating about being in this is when you look at the choices, you're like, well, I don't want this. I know, but I don't want that either. I know, but I still don't want. And I really do go back and forth as to, but I'm not. What I always tell people is I totally understand both sides, and I think both sides are very valid right now and have a lot of thought. And I don't know. I believe at some point, for the good of children, we have to go back to school. Kids need the interaction with each other. They need the moments where the teacher isn't being the teacher, where they're in line and they're learning how to line up, and somebody bumps someone else and that kid learns how to say, yo, excuse me, instead of yo, get off me. Like, right, where those moments, they are gone right now for our kids. And that is an enormous part of child development, is being a part of that environment. So when you say new norm, I'm with you, right? I don't even like it when I see it on social media. It annoys me because I always tell people, don't let it be. Like, this is not. And I don't ever want to think that this is my new norm. And if it ever becomes too normal, I'm going to start pushing hard to go back the other way, you
Yeah.
know?
Same here. Same here. Added to that with the stay at home. Think about, in the South, it's hot now, but up north where I am, it's gonna be hot. And think about that youngster that doesn't have air conditioning in their home, and it's 90 degrees outside and it's 100 inside, right? And now I still have to stay in here. That's the one that has an AC. It's easy to say, as you said, stay at home. I got air conditioning. It's 60 degrees in here, right? Or 70 degrees during the summertime in here. But that kid that's got to be in that sweltering 110 heat in a small apartment with a bunch of family members in the apartment. It's gonna be brutal.
And on top of that, close everything else, right? No camps, no YMCA, no, but probably I don't know, but they'll probably close the pools, right? Because you think large amount of people. So you add that into the mix, and at some point you just got to shake your head and say, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I mean, I live in upstate New York, right? You're in the heart of it. So you had it and you live in the heart of it. Is it
Yeah,
as bad as they're saying where you are?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I don't
No,
know what to believe is my point. I feel like there's so much out there. I get overwhelmed.
it is. Jersey's bad,
Yeah.
and particularly this part of Jersey,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So
And these are the people who take care of those kids a lot of times, right? So it's like then you're like, well, what's best for the kid? I want him to get back to school. I know, but I want him to have a dad too, right? Like I want him to have a mom too. Man, it's a tough one. Hey, listen, any last pieces of advice or knowledge you want to drop for anybody?
just just in these times of a global pandemic, to the folks listening, because I know there are folks that have their own levels of anxiety. Um, and just I'm saying to them, make sure that you strike a balance in your life, right? We're indoors all day. I told you I spend my hour outside. You find time in your day to spend your hour outside or wherever you can exercise. But also check yourself emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, physically, because you've got to be balanced. Because if you're not balanced, you're not gonna be able to position yourself to be that asset to your young people. So make sure that self-care is a priority. As much as you're giving to young people, take care of self. And if you got family at home, remember your family needs you as well.
Yeah.
You can't be just 100% my students, my babies at the school, right, who are at home right now. But you may have family at home, children, spouse, whatever the case may be, that also need you, right?
Yeah.
So that balance is critical.
And it's what's interesting is I hear that too, right? So the other reason I hear that teachers aren't teaching live is, well, I have my own kids. And I asked Jerry Brooks that, and his response was, but you're still getting paid. He said, his response was, look, if you're still drawing a full paycheck, nobody's asking you to put in 6 hours or 7 hours, but you could give your students 40 minutes a day. You could give your students 20 minutes, give them 30 minutes, give them something, right? And I think there's both ends of the spectrum right now out there. And that's what I'm so fascinated about when I say I'm writing is I'm fascinated by the spectrum of some teachers who, like you said, are all in on their students and need to be reminded they have a home, right? And the other ones who are 100% focused on the home, and somebody's got to be like, hey, remember, you got students. Don't forget about them. And I think, like you just said, finding that balance, but I think people are starting to find that balance more. At least I am personally, and but this was brand new. When you go through something new in life, I think I felt like I took a right hook to the face, and I wasn't knocked out, but I was wobbled. Like I hadn't been hit. I didn't see it coming, and I was wobbled, and I was like, whoa, okay, let me get my bearings. And it took a minute to get them, but once I got them, now I'm personally to the point where I'm embracing this fully. I mean, I'm spending my time with everything in my life that I've worked for, I'm getting to come true right now in the sense that let me work hard so one day I can be home with my kids. Well, I'm home with my kids right now every day, and I can have that interaction and that one-on-one time with them. And I say the activities that I used to always be rushing through, right? Like, let's go ride our bike. I know, but I got a half hour, and then I get home. I got to pack, and then I got to go to the airport, and then right now I'm like, how long can we ride the bike for? Like, how long can I make it last? Right, just to and we'll ride our bike for 2 hours or an hour and a half, and I'm not trying to get anywhere. And allowing myself, that was the hardest part for me, and it still is, allowing myself to be okay with myself.
Yeah.
with that has been probably the hardest, I think, thing for me. But when you're super driven and you've lived your whole life being super driven, which, especially as an adult, right? It's like all of a sudden you stop and you turn somebody's focus. And I almost feel like in a way it was a blessing for me. Like it's not financially, it's hard. And I like you, I lost a lot of work as well. But at the same time, there's been so much good for me that has come out of this. And that's why I smile when I go through it. Listen, man, these hours go quick. I could easily do another hour with you, and I will. I'll have you come back on in the future if you don't mind, man. It was great.
Appreciate you.
It's good to
Appreciate the opportunity.